Welcome, welcome, welcome to another edition of Success Talk. This is Dr. Herbert Harris, and we do these interviews with people who have accomplished great things and have them share some of the great things, but also the fact that they've had challenges, they've had obstacles. So many things have gotten in their way to keep them from achieving their greatness. But in spite of all things, they have been able to overcome, have a breakthrough, and do fantastic things. And so my guest today is my good friend, Dr. James Graham, who is one of those mythical people that were he was a first in so many areas. He became an incredible doctor, a physician, surgeon, doing great things. And so he's here today with us to share some of the things that he's accomplished, how he dealt with his obstacles and made his breakthroughs. Dr. Graham, thank you to Success Talk.
Oh, man, you the man. You the man, Herbert. You the trying to be just like you.
Well, I tell you, Doc, I mean, I listened to, that tape you shared about your background and some of your experiences, man. I just had to shake my head because it was such an important message. And so many of our young people need to know that
Oh, yeah.
it's never been easy.
No,
Okay. You
no,
know, it's never been easy. So, but Doc, maybe give a little about your background, where you grew up. And I know you're an incredible family, but those roots that made you who you are.
well, the roots comes out of Lumberton, North Carolina. That's where I was born in a little town called Town. They had little black areas, and this was a little black area that had a dirt road, and most of the people in the community were relatives. There's probably about 20 families in
Mm-hmm.
there. That's where I started out, and from the standpoint of my birth, living with my grandmother, and my mother was off in college, and she really raised me from about two until I was about 5 or 6 years old, because mother was in college, my dad was a military man, one of those original paratroopers. It was tough back in those days, 1944 and all that stuff, and he joined the paratroopers, the black paratroopers.
Mm.
So he was a great guy, and with his career in the military. But that's where it all started, in a little town called Town, a little black community of about 20 or 30 families. And that's where it started.
Wow. So now you left there, you went on to school, went on to college, and what was that like? Where did you go to
Well,
college?
I went to North Carolina Central University in Durham. I was supposed to go to A&T, but I had a mentor in high school that was a history teacher from North Carolina Central, and this was her first year teaching, and she took a liking to me, and she convinced me not to go to A&T, that I needed to go to a school like North Carolina Central. She knew I was interested in biology and all that type stuff, and I was going to be a dentist. So she felt I stood a better chance of reaching my goals if I went to North Carolina Central. And that's where I went. And ran into my second mentor, who was Dr. Vernon Clark, one of the most dynamic men that I've ever met. Had a big impact on my life, and he stayed with me until the day he died.
Wow.
He was a molecular biologist there with his PhD at North Carolina Central. And he invited me into his science lab, and you'd go into his lab and do work with him doing molecular biology. And it was a lot of fun for me, but it was tough. And he was a tough teacher. And so he convinced me to not go into dentistry, but to look at medicine, because the black community needed more black doctors.
Mm.
One of the
Wow.
things switched over from the dentistry to considering being a black physician. And
Well,
so I
Doc,
finished.
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You know, you started out, you came to college wanting to be a dentist. We do a lot with young people now, and so often you ask young people, what do you want to be? And nobody knows. I don't know. I can't think of the last time I've asked a young person when they said they wanted to be a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer. What was it in those early days? How did you decide you wanted to go into dentistry in the first
Well,
place?
as a black person, you didn't have a lot of options back in those days. You either became a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, and possibly some other just took a career in some trade. Mm-hmm. And those are pretty much the options that blacks had. And there's so many options now. I think this is confusing for the black community. You know, we made a lot of progress over the years, and we've learned that there's so many things you can do. And the music industry and the movie industry has really just influenced a lot of youth from the standpoint of just what they want to do. They want to get rich fast. They want to be in the limelight. And these other areas, you have to work too hard to be a medicine or lawyer and those kinds of things. So I think that's one of the problems we have. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me just tell you this story. I have a friend there in Detroit. His wife was one of the anchor on one of the TV stations there, and he was sitting down talking to me, and obviously he was a professional as well. Had a good and sent his kids to private schools, and sent his son to a prep school called Cranbrook there in Detroit, which is a very highly respected across the country prep school. And he had the great fortune of meeting Henry Ford's daughter. Mm. And Henry Ford, not daughter, I guess she was the granddaughter of Henry Ford. And the family liked him because he was at Cranbrook, and they kind of liked each other in high school and all that stuff when they were there. And he ultimately married that girl. Mm. His dad was saying, Jim, I don't know what to tell him. I've been talking to him. You're in one of the richest families in the world, man. You need to learn something about automobiles. And he told him, said, Dad, I want to be a rapper. I don't want to be in automobiles. I want to be a rapper. He just was pulling his hair out. The boy just, here's this great opportunity for him being a part of the Ford family and to be able to probably one day even be the CEO or a big executive in the Ford Corporation. And his interest was rapping. Mm. And it's just the young people are just different today. The millennials, we don't understand them, but everybody goes through that. They didn't understand us when we were coming with beatniks and flower children, all that kind of stuff. So each generation has its own path that they follow. But I think that was the one big difference in us is that we went to historically black schools, communities where the doctor, the lawyers, the dentists, everybody lived in the same community.
And these were the people we looked up to. That was the thing. When you said dentist, I remember my dentist was Dr. Roseman. My doctor was Dr. Roan, Dr. Upperman.
Oh, yeah, great guy.
And these were the people we looked up to. But that's changed now.
That's because of the music industry. Everybody wants to be a movie star. Wants to be a rap star.
Wow.
And, there's big money in it, but I mean, it's almost like the NBA. Everybody wants to play basketball, but the chance of football, the chances of you making is, you got to have a plan B because most of them are not going to make it. Right. Where there's opportunity in medicine, if you work hard, a lawyer or whatever, you work hard, you can still look at one point and you might even be the CEO of some major corporation where we have major corporations, 500, what is it called? Fortune 500 companies that are run by black CEOs. So those are great opportunities, but you got to have a vision and you got to have a plan and a goal to get there.
And you got to be willing to sacrifice and patience.
Exactly. And have a plan.
And have a plan. Now, when you were in college and you made that decision, so you were saying Dr. Clark was critical in sort of guiding you.
Oh, my goodness, was he? He saw more in me than I saw in myself,
Yeah.
And, I was kind of not an introvert, but I was kind of didn't realize, I had more ability and confidence that I needed. And he gave me that by working with him. He just gave me that.
Wow. Now that's critical. That's something.
And he ran the pre-med and pre-dental society there at North Carolina Central. And what I did, this man had devoted his whole life to education of these black kids in this college, getting them into medical school, dental school, PhD programs. And one of the things I did, he had never been rewarded any recognition for what he had done for all these students. So when I was up in Michigan practicing up there, just before I retired, I called several of his students who had been doctors. And so I said, let's put together something and have a banquet for Dr. Clark and thank him for all that he's done for all these students over the years. He didn't know anything about it. And we raised about $200,000 and had this big banquet for him at North Carolina Central over on the Duke campus at one of the nice hotels over there. And he walked in, and probably was at least 50, 60 of us that were there. And he just broke down in tears as he walked into the room, just saw what we were doing for him.
Ooh.
And the other thing I did, there was a professional artist there in the area I was in Michigan. And I asked him to send me a picture of himself. And he sent me this picture, and I had her to make a bust of him that we presented to him at this banquet that they now is, in the biology building at North Carolina Central, and a wing has been dedicated to him called the Vernon Clark wing. And the big bust is there, and a list of all the students that he's trained over the years and made these donations for this, for his set up a endowment for him. And I still have him in my plan. I'm not going to live forever. So he's going to get a nice donation from me at my death as well to go into that thing. What it does is offer scholarships and help for the kids at North Carolina Central who are majoring in the medical sciences.
Wow.
So that was a great event. They videoed the whole thing. The university sent out the videographers. And I sit down and look at that sometimes, and I'm just almost in tears because now he's gone. He developed Alzheimer's about 83 and died probably about 5 years ago. And I would go up to see him in the Alzheimer's unit, take him out to dinner. And I think I could just never thank him for all that he did for me.
Wow. Doc, of all the things, I've interviewed a lot of people. Yeah. And almost to the person, there's somebody that helps show the way, that provides the confidence, that provides that belief in the person. And, so many times we never get a chance to acknowledge it or to pay it backwards. And just as you were telling that, man, it just made a chill go down my body because I was thinking about some of the people who helped me and who I can't get that chance to do. I'm glad you guys took it upon yourself to do it while he was still alive,
Exactly. He didn't retire until he was 80 years old in North Carolina. I had to run him out.
Right.
He just loved it so much. And
yes.
So he retired at age 80.
Well, he clearly had a mission. And the mission was bigger than money. Probably had nothing to do with money. He had a mission. And that's something that I don't know that I see that anymore. I don't see that as much anymore because those Black men, those people of color who had a mission just seem to be so integral to so many of our successes. If we go back, as many people as I've interviewed, there's always, especially I've interviewed white, Black, but even with white, there's always somebody who provides that guidance.
This man, you've heard of the governor's school here in North Carolina.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He ran the governor's school here in North Carolina over in Laurinburg. They have that in Laurinburg.
Yes.
I guess they have it in the summers and so forth. And he'd go over there and run that governor's school. But he was just he could break anything down, to the level that anybody could understand it. One of those kind of people.
Yes.
People can just have that knack of being able to make you understand and simplify it for you that you can actually see it. And that's the way he taught.
Yes.
And Black and white over there at the governor's school, and they loved him.
Yes. Now, Doc, as you were moving, from college into that medical arena, I'm sure you experienced racism and situations like that. Was there any particular event that just sort of stood out, one of those kind of obstacles that it took the good Lord and three responsible people to help get you through it.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I we went there to North Carolina. I mean, to Chapel Hill. There were 10 of us. That was the year that they had affirmative action, 1970,
Mm-hmm.
where all various medical schools around the country that they would be defunded if they did not open the doors up to more Americans.
Mm.
And they've never taken that number of people into Chapel Hill. And it was 10 of us, and we went in. I don't think anybody expected us to make it.
Mm.
From historically black colleges, 8 out of the 10, 2 boys. One went to North Carolina State, and the other one went to Carolina. That was black, that went into that medical class. But we got together as a unit when we went in there, and they put a fella by the name of Hoshaw. Brilliant. The boy was just a genius. Big, he lifted weights. It's one of those guys that lifted weights and still was very bright and so forth. And they put him over us during that first year to ensure that he could give us enlighten us as to how to be successful, because he had been successful at Chapel Hill. He had finished Chapel Hill and he was doing a fellowship in cardiology. And so he took the time to meet with us twice a week to kind of go over with us what we were doing. And we met every day. And another thing that was unique about Carolina, we had this dean there, James Taylor's father, who came in as the dean, I guess, in 1970. And he was different. He came in with a ponytail and, baggy clothes, and didn't wear that suit and so forth that most you expect to see deans in. And he changed the whole curriculum at Chapel Hill. When you go to medical school, particularly those first 2 years, you're doing classroom work and lab work. A medical student starts out in the morning at about 8 o'clock, and you're in classes and labs from 8 until 5 every day, 5 days a week. And he came in and said, no, I'm going to change this. You all are only going to be in the class until 12 o'clock, and there'll be some labs in the afternoon, but you can do that on your own time and so forth. And that just helped us tremendously because it gave us more time to study and catch up, because we were competing with Duke undergraduate students, Davidson, a lot of out-of-state, difficult to get into Chapel Hill, out-of-state. And if you came into a medical school at Chapel Hill, you were coming from Harvard, Yale, and those kinds of places. So it was very difficult for us because we were coming from the historically black colleges, not saying that we hadn't been trained, but they had everything in those schools for those kids. And, the biochemistry, the physics, they were just much more advanced classes and so forth. But when I was at North Carolina Central, Dr. Clark sent me over to Chapel Hill. I was going over there to medical school, and asked me to go over there and take some courses in biology. And I registered in the summer to go over there and take some courses because he wanted me to be prepared when I got over there, and I did that. But anyway, we did well. All 10 of us graduated on time. I'm sure they felt that they were going to punch us out in the first year, but we all hung together, studied together, and it makes so much difference when you studying together. And those guys who came in before that, affirmative action, they admitted one every year or every other year or something like that, and they were alone. They had nothing. We had each other, and that helped us to work together, particularly when you're studying. There's so much information that you have to gather in medical school, those first years of just clinical stuff. I'm not clinical, but the classroom work. And I didn't know everything. Maybe I didn't know something, somebody else knew it. They'd pass it on. I want you to cover the Krebs cycle, and whatever it is, or some molecular aspects of what was going on in biochemistry. And the person would come in with his sort of teach us what he had learned. I would teach them what I'd learned, and we kind of shared that information, and that's how we made it.
Wow.
All of us graduated on time. That was the wonderful thing. And all went on to have very successful careers. Some of them went into academic medicine like me, and others did private practice. And but regardless, we all did well. That was we helped each other throughout that 4 years.
Wow.
Now, you asked about prejudice. Now, I'm not naive, but I just kind of look straight ahead and I let things roll off my back. And there were probably some things that were done to me that I didn't even realize because I was so busy trying to study and stay on top of things. I didn't let nothing bother me. So I
Mm.
pull back on an incident at Chapel Hill that I can say, boy, that just it just stuck in my mind as a very negative thing from the standpoint of my being black. That didn't happen at Chapel Hill.
Mm.
There was a story when I went to Duke. Some very funny things happened over at Duke when I left Chapel Hill and went to Duke. I was the first Afro-American to go into the program over there. And they normally would take in 6 residents per year into the OB-GYN residency program. The year I came in, they took 7. I didn't
Mm.
raise questions. Okay, we got 7 as opposed to 6. The next year they took 6, and every year after that they took 6. Uh, so that was one thing that kind of was in the back of my mind over there as to what I was doing. And another thing that happened at Duke that a part of you, once you get into the later years, what we call a chief residency, they had a program that the guys in the chief residence, they had a rotation that they would spend on a private doctor's office for 6 weeks. That was canceled for my year. Nobody did it. And my goodness, well, why did they cancel that? But there was no white doctors in the area that was going to take in a Afro-American into their office with Miss Ann. Miss Ann examining Miss Ann and so forth. Mm-hmm. So that was another thing that stood out. And another thing that I can think of from the standpoint of they have what they call a Buffalo party. Residents get together and that's a fun party every year. Buffalo one year. That's being in charge of organizing the party for the residents and fundraising and so forth. And they usually had that at the Durham Country Club. But they wouldn't have it there when I was Buffalo because they didn't allow any black people over into the Durham Country Club. So we had a different place because we had blacks in the residency now. Mm-hmm. So I essentially ended that program where you would go over there in the Buffalo party at one of these nice white country clubs because they didn't allow blacks in there. So that was another that I can just think of. Mm-hmm. But the thing that was most impressive for me, and this Southern gentleman from Kingston, North Carolina, country boy, went to medical school, did well, went and did OB-GYN, did a lot of research and those kinds of things. And he was the chairman at Duke, Dr. Roy T. Parker. I never will forget him. And, I know we had what they call a private diagnostic clinic at Duke. And residents would go in and walk with the professor and examine the patient and so forth. And I never will forget this patient was in a room and Dr. Parker and I walked in and she looked up and saw I was black. And she said, "He can't be in this room when you examine me." And he looked at her and that just did something for me. He looked at her and said, "Madam," with that Southern, "Madam, you can put your clothes on and get out of my office." Turned his back and walked out and shut the door. And it was powerful. I said, "Lord, have mercy." I mean, that was, for him to do that, one of his private patients, it just said something about him, even though he was a Southerner and probably had his things about all, how white folks are. But that really impressed me about him. Wow. And I never wanted to go into oncology. I was impressed by this boy in Charlotte who was a fellow from one of the islands, a little short guy, was what they call a GYN oncologist. And in the summer, I went to Charlotte and rotated with a group of physicians there in Charlotte. And he really had impressed me to the point that I just said, this is what I want to be in life. This guy is just, he said, "Jim," he said, "I went into oncology because I wanted to be the best." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "When you come out and you're black, people don't trust you. And you want to be able to take care of yourself with major situations." And what I decided to do was to do a fellowship in cancer. And in cancer research, you do a lot of radical stuff and a lot more in-depth operations on cancer patients, which is more difficult. He said, if you're not going to be an oncologist, at least do a fellowship, because when you come out, you'll be so far ahead of all your surrounding colleagues that you will be a much better doctor because you did it. Wow. And I that. And I said, I went back to Duke and I said, well, I said, when I went there, I said, I'm going to be an oncologist like Dr. Walter. Mm-hmm. And as you could say, grandfathers of oncology was at Duke at the time, Bill Kreisman. And he'd written books, and that was a major book that he wrote for GYN oncology, and he was there. And I worked with him. And that just, he was a white guy, but he was, I don't think he had a prejudice bone in his body either, because he treated me fairly, and I didn't feel any pressure at all. Mm-hmm. But those are the things that in just medicine, there is obviously this discrimination from the standpoint of those kinds of things. But I'm a godly man, and I did a lot of praying, and I just looked forward. And I didn't look to the side of me. I didn't look behind me. I didn't look anywhere but straight ahead. Tried to be the best doctor I could be. And that's what I became. I wanted to be the best at what I was doing. Wow. And that's the way it all happened.
Well, you know, Doc, you dropped some gems here, man. I mean, you dropped like so many pearls. Number one, you just shared the spiritual principle: two or more gather on one accord. Yeah. I am the making power among them. And the fact that the Black students, when you were in medical school, that you all hung together. What was it, 9 of you? Yeah. 10 of us. 10 of you. That you all hung together, because if you had not had that collaboration, that type of group mind, many of you would probably not have graduated.
No. And so, as I said, if we had each gone there individually with our backgrounds, historically Black, and there have been people who go, Melvin Clayton left and went to Chapel Hill, got admitted 2 years before I did. And he graduated from UNC. I mean, that's from North Carolina Central. He was just a bright guy. Some people are just brilliant. And I don't consider myself just brilliant. I'm really just an average guy who just works hard and just relentless. I get it. I work. Some people don't have to work hard to get it. I had to work hard because I just had to work hard to do what I do in life.
But you had the desire. That's the key, though. You got to want to succeed. The Bible says, "Seek and you shall find, knocking it shall be open, asking it shall be answered." But if you don't seek it, if you don't pursue it, it's like you got to prime the pump. You got to do that. You got to put in that time. And when you do your part, God can do his part.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I had 6 other residents there with me, and they were from various places. Chris Wilson was from Austin, Texas. He was from Austin, Texas. I had another one that was from Raleigh. Girl, she was a female. She was the only female in the group there at Duke, and that's 6. Arnie Grandis was from Greensboro. Another guy was from Portland, Oregon. And they never made me feel different. We stuck together there too. And, I don't know if things were said behind the doors or whatever, but I had none of them to look at in a negative way. John Dorman was from down there in Georgia. I mean, he was just Tiffany, Georgia, one of the countryest places in the world. And John probably turned out to be one of my best friends in residency there. I had his back, he had my back.
Wow.
And it just made them realize that, hey, Blacks are no different than any other friend you have. I'm working hard like you, trying to get through this. And they realized that I would, I worked hard. They knew I worked hard.
Yeah.
And
wow. But that was a heavy duty lesson. And then I think something else you pointed out, and that is, many times we look at white people. I know when I interviewed Joe McNeil, one of the Greensboro 4.
Yeah.
And he was sharing a story about, when they were into the second or third day of the sit-in, that this white lady came and said something to the effect that, "What took you all so long, to do this?" And
Yeah.
so there's like a lot of good white people who they're not going to wave a flag or jump out front. But
No.
when that opportunity comes as the doctor with the lady in the examination room, or when that opportunity comes, they'll step up. And I have to take my hat off because so many white people, when that opportunity comes and they step up, often it's at their own risk. It's like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
some of their peers can get real upset about that too. But I really have to give them, as they say, give them their props, man, because when
Yeah.
they step up like that, as you said, it made you feel different inside, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And one of the things I never will forget, one of my childhood friends, my mother worked for this white family when we were in Lumberton. And then she went off to college to Charlotte. And the white family moved to college. They ran a tool and die company there in Charlotte. And they moved to Charlotte. And during the summers, my mother would go and act as a maid for them because she had done this when she was babysitting the kids and when she was in high school and all this. So it gave me a great opportunity because I had all these fantastic trips during the summer on summer vacation. Mother would be the maid and I'd be the kid, and they had four other kids, and we we're all about the same age, and we just kind of grew up together every summer. So what
Yes,
happened was, I never will forget. You've heard of the Highlands up in the mountains and the Highlands. Very
yes,
prominent people live up there and stuff. And they had a home up there in the mountains. And one summer we went up there, and Mr. Northey, that was his name, John Northey, the father, and they had two boys and two girls, a set of twins, boy and the girl twins. And we were very close as kids. So we just had so much fun up there in the summer. So he wanted to take us horseback riding. So he all put us in a little station wagon and we went to this little farm and we were in the car just playing around while he went inside to get everything signed up. He comes out. He didn't say nothing. He just said, we won't be able to ride horses today. We'll have to do it another time. I knew right then what was going on. He
mm,
wouldn't let a black ride horses. I was about 10, 11 years old. And so we went on. He said, I'm going to take you all to the movie. There's a little matinee movie downtown and so forth. And he took us there and dropped us off. I forgot what was playing, but we all went, all four of us. And we sat in the center aisle, all four of us. And the movie was getting started. And a man walked down and touched me on the shoulder and said, son, you can't sit here in the center. You have to sit over there on the side in another section. And I looked, I'm 10, 11 years old. What do I do? So I get up and go over to the other section. And I'm over there. And what but four of us in the whole thing going movie. This is a little country town back then. This is Highland, a matinee for kids. And so I was sitting over there in the corner by myself in the seat. And John went up to the manager and said, can I go sit with him? And John came over there and he sat with me and we watched the movie.
wow.
But that was almost like that was branded in my mind I never will forget that. That was branded in my mind forever.
Mm,
As we grow older, whites and blacks, when they're kids like that, we kind of separate. We were both in Charlotte. I went to West Charlotte. He went to another school, white school in Charlotte, Miles Park and so forth. And we really didn't have much contact during our high school years. He played tennis, I played tennis, but we never got together. I don't know
yeah,
what it is when people start to see you differently, I guess, when you get older and your
yeah,
friends and they don't want you running around with black folks. So we separated.
yeah. Well,
But
now,
mother, I never will forget. I was up in Michigan and he called me. He said, Jim, this is John Northey. I said, John, my God, I haven't heard from you in years. He said, mother has ovarian cancer. He knew I was a cancer doctor.
uh-huh.
And you know anybody that can kind of give us the right direction? So I knew the guy at the Carolina Medical Center. So I said, yeah, I'll give him a call and have him to see your mother, man. Yeah, this is one of the best guys in Charlotte. So I called and talked to him, and John took him to her, and she had advanced ovarian cancer. She might have lived 6 months to a year, but she died.
Mm-hmm.
And when I retired, I called John up and said, John, why don't we go out to lunch? So I went downtown and we went out to lunch and we just talking. He went to went to so it was Cornell, the law school, and all. He has but this big firm there in Charlotte and so forth. So that was a rebonding for us. We rebonded about 7 or 8 years ago, and right now I call him for advice on things and things of this sort. We travel together. He has a boat and travels a lot, going up into the mountains with his boat. Now he invites Sadie and I and so forth. So that took all these years for us to get back together. And but it's been wonderful, that we're able to do that. And we recall our friendship when we were kids, and it's kind of like we've rebonded here in our retirement. Retired, I'm retired, and so forth. And it's just nice to be able to have a friend like that goes back to your childhood. But that time in between, we were separated because of whatever reason.
Well, Doc, it just shows racism is a learned behavior. Because I too grew up in the South, and it seemed that there was a time when we were kids, up until about the age of 9 or 10, seemed like everybody was the same. The little black boys and girls played together, and the white boys and girls played together. But it seemed like around 9 or 10, everything changed.
Yeah.
And so it lets us know that it's a learned behavior, and it's so deep, and so many of our white brothers and sisters, it's so deep that they don't even know that they're doing it.
Sure.
And once you get into the mechanism of it, when George Washington Carver was going to college, I think he went to college, I think it was Iowa, but when he went to college, it was down there white college. He was like the only black person there. And they wouldn't even eat with him. At lunch, he had to eat by himself. And he did that. And finally, the wife of the president would come every day and have lunch with him, so he wouldn't eat alone.
Isn't that something?
And these are the kind of things I think, that's why this interview is so important, that so many Black people and white people don't know how this paradigm really was created. Well, it was created at the very beginning of the country, but how it has perpetuated itself and morphed through different relationships. I interviewed a lady once, she was a white lady, a principal, and she was principal of a predominantly Black school. And I said to her, there's something inside, that a resentment that, as a matter of fact, I had gone to her class, and one of the teachers had a kid there, and the desk was duct taped to the floor. Now we're talking like 7-year-olds. The desk is duct taped to the floor. And she said, well, this kid, when he gets upset, he'll throw stuff, etc. And I'm like, anybody you can pick up. I don't think you got to duct tape the floor, But we did some sessions with the students and with the parents. And as we worked back, we were saying, what is your first experience? Because she had come out of segregated, white segregation, and we'd come out of Black segregation, and said, well, what was your first experience with Black people? And she said her first experience was when she was a senior and they integrated her school. And because of that, they canceled the prom that year. And so she never, ever got to go to a senior prom. And that's it.
We were worse than COVID.
We were worse than COVID, man.
Yeah, they're gonna catch something from us.
They canceled the whole prom. And so many people don't know that aspect of things, how when you brought a Black person into the equation, it's like you couldn't rent the horses. You couldn't sit together in the theater.
Yeah.
But how when white people accepted it, that's why it perpetuated itself. As Black folks, we really couldn't do much about it. JoJo and the fellas, they went and sat in down at Woolworths and got spat on and thrown upon and everything. Short of that, we had to accept it. But so many white people accepted it. They saw it. They knew it was not right, but they accepted it. But when they got an opportunity, that good thing, when they got an opportunity to say, hey, this is not right, let me step up, you have proof positive that it happened. So, and there was another point you made that I don't think our young people know, and many of us, we both grew up in that era between segregation and integration.
Definitely.
So our feet were solidly in the segregated mindset. And so you had just how the system worked. My mother and my aunt particularly, and my uncle were college educated teachers. My aunt was a teacher. My mother was a teacher. But in the summer, they would go to Atlantic City and work as domestics.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah,
at the clubs.
and did it proudly. I mean, they weren't that too proud that they were teachers that they couldn't go and do that. They
That's
were
it.
trying to just make a living for their family.
That's it. And then it turned out later, at a later point. But let me continue. I remember being in school, and even until latter years, until up to the last 15, 20 years or so, when the last clubs, there was a club in Wilmington, I think it was called the Trails Inn, down near the Sound.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my teachers who had bachelor's and master's degrees worked down there as waiters
Yes.
and waitresses.
For sure.
For sure. And so
For
many of
sure.
our young people don't know that our people were committed. They were so committed to success that they did whatever it took. If it meant I can have more degrees than a thermometer, but if I'm a Black person, white people see me as a domestic, as a waiter in some menial position. But if I need to play that role to get the money to take care of me and my family, so be it.
Well, let me tell you one of the things that probably changed with just talk about integration. Mm-hmm. I did not get to go to an integrated school until I was in about the sixth or seventh grade it was. Mm-hmm. And that happened because my father was a military man. Mm-hmm. And he got stationed in Germany, Stuttgart. And so mother and I went over with him there, and I was in the seventh grade. And I'd always, and this is why I worked so hard, because I'd always had a problem reading and comprehension. I'd stumble over words and things of this sort. And mother worked with me and sent me to all kinds of places to try to help me to be able to read better. But when I went to Germany, and I think that just changed everything. When I was sitting in the classroom, the only Black sitting up in the classroom with these white kids in the seventh grade. And I never will forget this, a professor, not a professor, a teacher by the name of white guy, Mr. Emerson. And he knew that I had some difficulty reading. And I think he was like an English or a literature teacher or something. And I was always getting poor grades. And just poor grades. I wasn't understanding. Mother was trying to help me and stuff. So she started getting my assignments, and he talked to her. And what would happen, we'd have an assignment and something like a story or something like this. And she'd sit there at night and read to me the assignments, the stories and so forth. And I never will forget that boy turned red. I came into the classroom and I took the test. I guess after mother had done this for me, and I got a solid 100. And the other kids knew I was kind of weak as well, thinking I'm just Black. He called me to the front of the room and said, James Graham got 100 on his exam. I want you all to stand up and clap. Wow. And the whole class got up, and that just made me feel so good. So good. And I tell you, boy, I never will forget that, man, because he wanted to help me. He wanted to help me. That was a white man that wanted to help me because he knew the kid. He didn't want me to be embarrassed because I'm the only Black in the class. I was quiet, didn't participate. But I think I aced about every one of his exams from that point. And another thing that happened in Germany that was talking about, segregation and prejudice and so forth. They had this big parade in Zurich, and our school band was invited to go and march in Zurich in this parade. And there were 4 people who played saxophone. And I was like sitting in the second seat. And they could only take so many kids. And the thing that affected me, I mean, just tremendously, was the fact that I didn't get to go, and the person in the third seat got to go. And that was another thing that was branded in my mind as to how did that third best player, saxophone, got to go, and I didn't get to go to Zurich to march in the band in Zurich. So that was something that was just strictly just racism there. That was what that was all about. And
wow.
But that hurt. That hurt when they left, and I knew I should have been going, and I didn't get to go.
Yeah.
And but that was another thing that kind of branded in my mind, something that you'll never forget from the standpoint of racism. And, but otherwise, that was a great experience for me in Germany because it put in the classroom with these white kids, and I started to do just as well as they were doing. You know, I was a B student for the most part, and but you know, I wasn't a C, D student.
Yes,
I could compete.
Yes,
and that was a springboard for me to say, "Hey, you can be whatever you want to be, son. Man, you can do what you want to do."
Wow.
Even here with all these white kids, I stayed there from, I guess, we were there for 3 years.
Yes.
And then came back to West Charlotte. And obviously, I did very well at West Charlotte.
Yeah.
Because I had that confidence that I needed to lead.
Yes.
Industry and all that kind of stuff came into play as to what I was going to do. These were successful blacks in the community, dentists and doctors and lawyers. And I was good in sciences, so it was obvious that I wanted to do something related to science, and dentistry was a science, and that's what I had planned to do. I look at my son-in-law, who's a dentist right now, and it's a position you work hard. And he was going to be a cardiovascular surgeon. He went to Morehouse.
Yeah.
And one of the dentists from Morehouse came, you know how they invite him to come and talk to the students about their career. And this dentist pulled Jordan aside and said, "Son, I understand you want to be a cardiovascular surgeon." "Yeah, that's what my plan is." He said he sat down and explained to him the lifestyle of a cardiovascular surgeon and that of a dentist. Dentist Jordan works about 3 or 4 days a week, home every afternoon with the kids at 5 o'clock, Saturday and Sunday off. And I look and I say, but I mean, that's good.
Yeah. Wow.
Have a lot more time for family and all this kind of stuff and so forth.
But anyway. You've done, I mean, you shared some stuff. There's so many lessons to be learned here. The fact that your mother could take that time, you know, in working with the school system. So, you know, there's such a relation between economics and education and family. And when we look at our system, so many of the parents, because of these low wages, and I think that's why a lot of people are not going back. That's great resignation, because a lot of people sort of woke up and said, "You know what? I'm not going to work for that. I'll stay home. I'll stay." But you know, so often we have parents who have good intentions, but they have to work 2 jobs, two and a half jobs, to have enough money to even support their family and keep the kids, you know, reasonably in a good school and doing good things. But they don't have that most valuable asset, that time and that commitment. And even when you have tutors, you know, there's a big difference between a mom teaching you, who loves you and wants you to learn, and a tutor who's making $10 an hour, who really doesn't give a damn.
Parents let me down when I was in Germany. I don't tell this very often, and I've forgiven them for it. But, you know, I participated in sports. I played football, basketball, ran track, all this stuff. And I was kind of a chubby kid, overweight. Wasn't fat. I was just overweight. So this happened when I was on the baseball team, and I played right field. And the season started, and I got into, you know, I came in a week after they had started. And we finished the season, and we won the championship. We were on it. I was in Germany, from age 11 through 14. Okay. So we had a big banquet. And when you win the championship, you know, as kids, you always got that leather jacket with the championship written on it, and
Yeah.
arms were, you know, kind of made out of cloth.
Yeah.
But it was something to be proud of. You know, I mean, you had that champion thing on the back, and it was light colors, and it was just something that every kid would always want to have. So in the banquet, they called each kid up and presented him with his jacket. They never called my name, Herbert. And I said, we went over and asked him, well, you a junior didn't get a jacket. Oh, we got one on order for him. And you know, I never got that jacket.
Wow.
And I say I forgive them. They didn't, I know military and all this kind of thing and so forth. You just have to be careful or whatever. So I don't know what role that played, but they didn't stand up for me on that one. Did not stand up and rebel and say, you're going to get this jacket for my son. That didn't happen.
Wow.
So I give them for that, but I don't know all the circumstances, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
But that was another tough blow in my life that I always remember, because I was embarrassed sitting there and all the other kids had their jackets and I didn't get one. I was only a little dog team, and that was very, very hard. It took me a while to get over that. Took me a while. So,
you know what? That's the honesty. That's the level. That's one of those kind of things. So many times, like you said, your parents don't come up to your expectations at that time in life. Like you said, you don't know all the variables and the background. All you know is the kid. You wanted that jacket. You wanted them to move heaven and hell to get that jacket. And when they didn't, you felt bad. And that, I think that's an important feeling, admission and feeling, because as you said, you forgave them because, you know, like they said, as the Master Christ said, he said, forgive them for they know not what they do. And that has such a profound effect, because so many times they didn't understand how important it was to you.
Yeah, can you imagine though, 11 or 12 years old and that happening to you? And it was just, I just didn't understand. Nobody really explained.
Wow.
But anyway, I never got that daggone jacket. Now, you know, I would still have that jacket. I'd probably have it in a daggone, mounted in a daggone frame or something.
I hear you, Doc. Well, at least you were an athlete, man. I couldn't play nothing, and they don't give jackets for spelling bees, you know.
But you a genius. Genius don't play sports.
You got that right. Every time I went out for sport, they gave me a clipboard and said, keep score, do the statistics. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, in spite of all that, though, Doc, you have risen. You have become a famous, a successful doctor.
Yeah.
When you look back over your life, well, what are you most proud of? I mean, you have so many accomplishments, but what are you most proud of? That greatest victory, that thing that when it makes you feel a certain kind of way.
I think just the matter of fact that I went to medical school, but nobody expected me to be successful. I was nobody really expected me to go this far in life. I'm one of the most successful guys out of 600 kids in my graduating class at West Charlotte. You know, a lot of guys did well and so forth and this type thing, but nobody, if you went and tried to pick somebody out, I'd have been at the bottom of the pile from the standpoint of them saying, well, this boy here is going to do well and is going to really make us proud. I think one of it was just my determination to prove everybody wrong. Nobody thought that I was going to be able to do this. And that's why I was driven. That's one of the reasons I was sitting talking to Sadie the other night. And we were talking about, you know, we got married at a very young age. She was 19 and I was 20, got married our sophomore year in college. And I never will forget when I went to my mother and took her home. You know how you take you. I went to see French and down there in Wilmington, and She came to Charlotte to meet my mother when we were in college. I told my mother, I said, Mother, I think I want to marry this girl. And she said, she's not pregnant, is she? He said, if she's pregnant, I'm going to stop supporting you. I ain't sending you to college no more. She said, well, no, ma'am, she's not positive. We don't plan to have children. She said, well, if she gets pregnant while she's in college, you can suspect my support to go because I don't think you need to get married right now. But anyway, she okayed it and her parents okayed it and everything worked out well. And they helped us out a lot. But I was just asking her, what was it that attracted her to me that she wanted to marry me? And I told her what I was about her. But I had this girl I was supposed to marry out of high school. It was my high school sweetheart, and she was a year behind me. And she was beautiful, had a nice personality. But it was something about Miss Sadie. When I first saw her as a freshman, you have 2 weeks when you get on campus to identify your girlfriend. And so the upperclassmen come in, they take all the nice women. So you say, you need to find somebody quick.
Yeah.
And so I saw her, and she had a yellow jacket, a yellow plastic jacket on, and she had some Roman sandals and a mini skirt, and her hair was green.
Lord have mercy.
Green. And I looked at her, and she happened to be the roommate of one of the girls from West Charlotte that was her roommate. Who in the world is that girl? I'd like to meet her. And that did it. I met her. She introduced me to her. And the next year we got married. But I said, well, what, she was just so different than any girl I guess I'd ever seen. And that's what did it for me. And I told her that. I said, I just hadn't seen anybody like you. Green hair and those Roman sound and pretty big legs you had and all this stuff. I said, I couldn't resist. I just had to meet you.
Yeah.
And I said, what made you? And it kind of shocked me. She said, your determination. Your determination is why I married you. You were determined. You're always determined. You're always trying to be the best. And I like that in you. And that kind of shocked me. I had no idea. I thought I was just a good looking guy,
Of course.
I've always been determined to, if I set my vision on something, I go at it 100%. There's no, I just got it. I'm doing it, period. I'm going at it. It's going to happen. Yes. And she saw that in me, she said. And that's why she married me. But anyway, because she was supposed to marry, and that was her cousin. She was supposed to marry Chestnut.
Really? Kenneth, yes. Kenny.
Because when I was at Duke, he was at Duke when we were at North Carolina Central.
Yes.
And what happened was I found her that first 2 weeks and we were dating and everything. So I guess about the end of the year, we were dating real strong, and I went over to see her and she wasn't in the dorm. And I said, well, where is she? Where is she? You didn't tell me she wasn't going to be here. They said, well, she checked out and she went over to Duke. I said, you went over to Duke? What the heck did you go over to Duke for? So I talked to everybody. So she was dating Duke over at dating Kenny over at Duke. And I found out, and I said, well, that's it. I'm through with you. And so I quit her. And Wendell, Satan, we call him Wendell Hicks.
Yes, I remember Wendell.
Wendell was going to be a dentist.
Wow.
He was a bright kid. Wendell was a bright kid. And he was my roommate. And I took him home Thanksgiving of my sophomore year. And we were meeting, and Sadie called Satan. We call him Satan, but it's Wendell. Wendell comes and say, man, he said, Sadie said she's sorry. She'd like to try to hook things back up with you again. And I thought about it. I said, well, give me a number. So I called and we talked, and we got married got married that August.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow. And I know all those players, Wendell, Kenneth, we all grew up together.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He was the best man at my wedding, Wendell Hicks.
Isn't that something?
And the
But
only thing that messed Wendell up
uh,
was he was at North Carolina Central, and he moved off campus in with I wish I could pull his name. His daddy owned a barber shop downtown in Bill and Sneed's. You know
oh,
Sneed.
Walter Sneed.
He moved in with Walter Sneed his sophomore year, and that killed him
Yeah.
because he got caught with some daggone dope. They broke in, and
Yeah.
obviously Wendell was a roommate, and they daggone booked both of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he had to go off and but that messed his whole career up for dentistry because
Yeah.
of that
Yeah.
record it
Yeah.
created with that.
Yeah.
And I felt so sorry. He's out now, and I talk to him periodically. Matter
Yeah.
of fact, I stayed a second time after 36 years at our second wedding.
Uh-huh.
Got here in St. James and Southport, and Wendell again was my best man, and Mildred Ann was Sadie's best friend in high school, and
Yeah. Yeah.
she was she was in the second wedding as
Yeah.
I guess the maiden of honor or something like that, and
Yeah.
one best man. So it was good
Wow.
time, good time,
Wow. Well,
definitely.
Doc, I tell you this, man. I guess we're kind of winding down, but I listened to the tape, which really dealt with your professional journey. You know,
Exactly.
I listened to that, and that in itself is an incredible journey of determination. And I think you really hit it on the head. As I listened to that tape and I heard all the different places you've been and all the different hospitals and schools and whatnot,
Yeah.
and determination is that key. That's the thing that kept you going, you know?
You got to be determined and don't take no for an answer. You just keep going at it. Keep going at it. I've been knocked down many times. I just keep going at it. Just keep going at it until it happens. And God will make it happen. You know, sometimes He gives these stumbling blocks to make you stronger. And it just made me a stronger man. I used to be a very quiet, introverted type person. And sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for because now I think I talk too much. Very loquacious and verbose. So,
but you got a lot to say. And see, that's a key
yeah,
thing, you know,
yeah,
that when you have a lesson, when you have a message, man, that's because these are gems. And it's so important when people see, and I think for our people, for Black boys and girls, they need to know that somebody like you existed, somebody like you came along who, as you said, you didn't read that well. You know, you weren't the genius of
I
a
wasn't
student.
like you and all this stuff. I'm just an average old Joe, just determined to do better and to make myself better. And that's where that worked. But the
Yes.
thing I hear about retirement, and I'm not out, but I enjoy the 100 Black Men. I mean, we're really helping a lot of kids with that. I mean, I love what I'm doing with these young Black kids who are borderline students. The Boule and all that stuff takes care of the bright kids, gives them scholarships. Nobody's helping these kids who are borderline.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about as a group on the 100. We take those borderline students, create portfolios for them when they're in high school, and take them to various events and teaching them the ropes and so forth, and taking them to the historically Black colleges so they can see them. Took them to the Black History Museum and all this kind of stuff. And they need it. They need it. So, I mean, I had one boy that had not been out of the town of Wilmington, man. 16 years old. His mother just protected him so. She was scared to be out in the community. And he joined the 100 Black Men. He was introverted. And we took him to one of our national meetings. And he had never been out. He hadn't even been over to Leland.
Mm.
Just think about that. 16 years old.
Yes.
And he went on this trip with us. We ran a van, and you should just see the his eyes lit up going into South Carolina and Georgia, and it got down to Florida to the hotel. And it was a fabulous hotel that we had all those kids. We had about 600 and some odd kids from all over the country.
Wow.
And just to see him beam.
Yes.
And he was interested in going into the military. And guess who was there at the convention? General Ory, I guess that's his name, the guy that did the thing down in New Orleans. And he and Uncle,
Honorary, yes.
Yeah. together and talked. He got his book and he signed it, and they communicated after the convention. And the boy got a full ride to VMI.
Wow.
I mean, that's saying a lot.
Yes.
See those kind of kids, and they make it. They were borderline kids.
Well, Doc, you've taken it now to a whole nother level, because the scripture says, to whom much is given, much is expected. And with all of the success and great things that you've done, to be paying it back.
It came from my mother, man. That was a giving woman. Mm-hmm. She would give you the clothes off. She had a sister with 13 children. And her husband was a tenant farmer down in Lumberton. They lived on a dirt road in a little shotgun shack with all them 13 kids. And that man worked hard. And I always thought he was crazy. And he did, he just talked like this. And everybody just thought Uncle Skeet was crazy. But you know what he was? I found out since I moved back to Lumberton, I learned about the Gully Geechee. He was a Gully Geechee. Wasn't nothing wrong with mine. He was just a Gully Geechee, and you just didn't understand what he was saying, because that's where he was raised. That's the way he talked.
Wow.
But mother go there and pack her trunk full of clothes and shoes. And we'd get on that dirt road and they see us coming, and you kids running at us barefoot, running up to us, and Aunt Bessie. And they couldn't wait for her to open the trunk, man. She'd open the trunk and they'd be grabbing the clothes and the shoes. And I mean, I'm sitting there too, and I'm privileged. And I just looked at it. But she was always giving to people.
Yes.
Always. Yes. And I'm the same way. I'll give you the things, clothes off my back, boy. I tell you, that's just the way I got it from my mama.
Wow.
And just amazing. And not only her, but there's so many other people that her daughter, she adopted 2 children after I left home, went off to college. Wow. One had a learning disability. She got her through high school, sent her to a school of culinary science. The girl has been at the hospital in Charlotte for almost 40 years. One of the most dedicated employees. She has an IQ of around maybe 80 or 75, but she's determined. She does her best. She puts her, and you can depend on her. She got that, and you can depend on her. She's dependable.
Yes.
And she's made a way in this world for herself.
Yes.
She's almost 50 years old now, but has been with this place for 30, 40 years.
Yes.
Same.
That's just something.
How it is to her job and what she's doing.
Wow.
So, but she's done that, adopted another girl that and sent her to college. And so I just commend her for what she's done for people.
Yes.
And it have to do.
Yes.
And she never wanted for anything. Seemed like the more she gave, Herbert,
the more she got. More
God gave her. And that's been like for me.
Mm-hmm.
She's even given to me after she dies. Mm-hmm. And what happened was she died, and all of a sudden I started getting this check from the state. And I said, what in the world is this? She said, your mother signed for you to get her pension plan until you die.
Wow.
I said, you are joking.
Wow.
I went out to daggone, I bought this camper, Satan, I'm going camping and stuff, and went out there and ran over a barrel in it, tore out the underside of it. So I had to rent a car. So I went to rent the car, and they said, okay. I got here to pay for it, and they said, well, it's already paid for. I said, what you mean it's already? North Carolina State is paying for it. State of North Carolina is paying for it. She's still giving, even her grave, man. I'm just saying. It's just the kind of woman she was.
Wow.
I said, what? Wow. It's like the bill was $700. I mean, I don't have to pay $7. No. The state of North Carolina for taking care of you. I said, good God Almighty. How do you think of it? That's why I got up. If you haven't heard of the 5 Blind Boys of Mississippi.
I remember them. Yeah.
And go and listen to the song, God, Thank You for Mama. And I did my mother's eulogy.
Uh-huh.
And I heard that song after the day she died, and Sadie and I were in the kitchen, and we just broke down in tears listening to the Five Blind Boys talking about thank you, God, for Mama. He talked about what Mama taught me my first prayer, and I sang that at the eulogy. What is the thing? I'm trying to pull it up. Yes, God, Jesus loves me. That was my first song that I learned how to.
Yes.
She taught me the Lord prayer. You know.
Wow.
She taught me how to be given.
Yes.
And that song talks about everything that your mama does to you. And I included a lot of that in her eulogy.
Yes.
Well, I had them people just when I was talking, I sounded like a Baptist minister up there giving that eulogy.
God have mercy.
And
so you're about ready to take up a collection.
Reverend Henry came to the funeral in Charlotte, and afterwards he got up at the mic and said, "Now I see why you didn't join the choir." I was singing up there on that, singing about my mother.
Wow.
No doubt. She was a powerful woman. Even Mildred Ann, she did stuff I didn't even know she was doing.
Yes.
Mildred Ann's son was at Livingston College. Was supposed to march. The family and everybody's gonna come down to see the son march. And Lord have mercy. They said he hadn't done so. He needed more credits. Mother had some contacts and friends. That boy marched the next day. I didn't know this until later. That he did that for Mildred Ann. I said, Lord have mercy. She just helped so many people, boy. With this, But anyway, that's why I'm the way I am. And I thank God for Mom.
Well, Doc, I tell you, this has been an incredible interview, man. You have shared some powerful thoughts, some powerful things.
Well, thank you. Thank you for just listening to me. You know, it makes me feel good to just tell the story, boy. Just tell the story.
Well, you told the story, but you're going to heal a lot of people because what I've been finding from these interviews is that interviews heal people, words heal people. And somebody will hear your story, like even the work you're doing with the 100 Black Men. As I was listening, I said my friend John Battle.
Oh, he's good. He's good.
I told John to send me an application because I bought tickets to the last event, and I was a week off. I was showing up, and it was over. I called him. No,
you would love it, Herbert.
Well, I'm going to join, and so your messages help me.
It is. And, you know, we go to middle school and we have academy that we have high school students.
Yes.
And those kids need help, man, and they need to hear you too.
Yes.
And you can give something to them.
Yes.
We just saved one. We just saved one. We've done our job.
We got one.
Our motto is what they see is what they be.
What they see is what they be. Excellent.
No doubt. So, you know, we go in there acting as professionals. They've never seen professionals. They've never seen a doctor before, particularly on a weekly basis, and talking about various things in life and what you've experienced and things of this sort. And so we'll touch somebody, just like that boy who had not been out of Wilmington before.
And now look at him.
Opened up his whole life, you know.
Well, Doc, I tell you, I thank you so much for this, for the time that you have shared with us.
Handle and discuss the things that you want me to kind of cover. And I need to get with you so I can, you say I need to put that other story in the writing. So I need to know how to do that.
Well, we're going to do that, Doc. You hurry up. You're a world traveler. I have to make an appointment as you go between the continents. Some people travel from house to house. You travel from continent to continent.
You know, God is good, you know, because I'm good to people. You know, I'm good to people.
Yes.
He's just giving me more because I'm giving more. The more I give, the more he blesses me, man.
Yes,
that's all it is.
Well, thank you, my friend. We sure appreciate you. We thank you. We salute you, man. We honor you. And we say that the world is a much better place because Dr. James Graham was here.
What you're doing, and you're doing a wonderful job, you know, with your 12 universal laws of success, and you're successful, and your daggone pro tandem program. That is, I take pro tandem every day.
Yes, sir.
I didn't get involved because I used to be in Zango.
Yes.
You heard of?
I remember that. Yeah.
And I was big. I was giving lectures around the country for Zango and all this kind of stuff. And somebody bought them out here. How they have those hostile takeovers and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I was big into Zango, traveling, and particularly I did research on Zango. And what it was that we drove over in cancer cells in culture. So think about that now. And what I did, I got this mangosteen extract from China. Researcher there, I wrote him and told him I was from Duke and all this stuff, and he sent me the extract from Zango, and we were able to put it in cell culture with the ovarian cancer. And it inhibited the growth of many of the cells.
Wow.
So it had a powerful effect on these cells in culture, ovarian cancer cells. So that's what I was going around giving lectures on that and so forth, as to what my research had shown related to ovarian cancer and the mangosteen fruit.
Wow.
So, it was, I did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then I retired. And after I retired, I didn't continue it. So, and so it was a nice journey.
Yes.
So
well, I'm glad I met you on that journey.
Nice journey, man. It's been a nice journey. I tell people that if indeed I were to drop tomorrow, I mean, I'm happy. I was happy that God gave me these last 15 years to be able to do what I want to do with no schedules, no pressure. I tell people the only pressure in my life is Miss Sadie. If I, I don't want to lose her. But honeydew stuff. That honeydew stuff is killing me.
Yeah. Yeah, but you got to keep your place in the line, man.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Life is good.
All right, Doc.
God has been good to both of us.
Well, thank you so much, man. We have shared some powerful moments. So you're leaving tomorrow for your trip, right?
Yeah, we'll be over and say this that since they had this daggone COVID, we haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
So we did do with the kids this summer. We went to Disney cruise in the Mediterranean. So they're going back to the Mediterranean and doing a Viking tour.
Okay.
Then she's got us scheduled to go in December. Actually, end of November, the whole month of December, we're going to be in the Indonesia.
Okay.
Start off in Hawaii and go from Hawaii all the way over to Australia, stopping at all those Indonesian islands and all this kind of. It's going to take us a month to do it.
Yes.
I've never done a cruise for a month, but that's what we're going to do.
Well, Doc, you cruise well, cruise healthy. I'm going to catch you. I'm going to catch you between your two cruises. And I tell you what, I'm going to listen to this tonight because there's so much rich stuff here that we need to share. And the best is yet to come.
All right, buddy. And send me a copy, audio copy, like I sent you this.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to send you an audio copy tonight, and I'm going to see if I can have a rough transcript so while you're traveling, you can kind of look it over.
All right. That would be great.
Okay, Doc. Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
This has been another Success Talk. This has been one of the most incredible success talks because what you've had today is an opportunity to hear from someone who's done it. Someone who started out in a place that, you say, well, didn't start with a silver spoon, didn't start with all of these assets.
Dirt road, house sitting up on bricks.
That's it.
That's where they built places back then. That's all we had.
Yes. But with determination.
Oh, yeah.
And good mentors, you were able to soar.
You can't leave God out of there, boy. And a lot of prayer.
God, it's all happening in the context of God.
A lot of prayer.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much. The world needs to hear this, and I'm going to make sure it does.
All right. Now, you take care of yourself.
Thank you
for the interview.
Oh, my pleasure.
Take care now.